My name is Seungjin, and I am 39 years old. And I came to the States in 1987, 88. From what I was told, they put in the documentation to come to the States to apply for their green card when I was first born. And so it took them 10 years for the paperwork to process for us to get approval to come to the States. And a lot of the rationale behind that, according to my parents, were education for me and my three other sisters. I have three older sisters. And I think there was also a dislike for the political climate at the time from my dad, because this was during the military dictatorship. And so that actually had a part to do with it. And I also believe the reason why he wanted to leave was because he feared that my sisters in the university setting would become commies. I guess there's all these little trends in Korean education, and that was what was in vogue at the time. And so he feared that if my sisters, who were in high school age, would go into universities, that they would become commies. So that was one of his concerns, so that's why he sort of brought us over. From what I remember, when I was 10 years old, we were pretty well off, but that wasn't the case, I think, even when I was 7 and 8, because we were quite struggling throughout when my sisters were younger until probably when I was 6 years old. When we made the move, we sold off everything, and I remember my dad distinctly telling me when I was in college that when we came to the States, he had $2,000 in his pocket. The bigger challenge was sort of the day-to-day stuff about how to enroll into the schools and the foods to eat, because you go to an American supermarket and you don't know anything off the shelf. And so we've had phases where we would eat like Vienna sausages for like 4 months, because that's the thing that he thought was, you know, really great at the time. And then we went through like a clam chowder phase because he said, this is amazing. And so there are, you know, all of these things, because he's constantly experimenting, going to the supermarket, buying different things off the shelf, not knowing what they are, but he's trying them out. And, you know, those are the sort of struggles that I couldn't even fathom. Having a family of my own now with children, I can't imagine uprooting and bringing the kids to another country. And despite the fact that my kids are relatively young still, I still couldn't think of doing that. And they would just fall apart. The struggle of trying to find a foothold in American society, when I say that, I'm talking more about how to apply for schools, how to get them into schools, how to, you know, find friends, how to deal with daycare. Because one of the decisions that my dad had made was that he wasn't going to bring us to Flushing, which is where most Koreans live now. Instead, he was going to bring us to the Bronx, which he felt would help us in adjusting to a new society. And he didn't want us growing up speaking Korean the entire time and not really learning English. Just thinking back at it, it made his life infinitely more difficult. But it made our adjustments, well, it was sort of to throw them in the deep end and see, make sure that they can swim better than most, kind of a situation. You know, he told me about going to sign up my older sisters to high school, and on his way back, he'd stop at a pub because he was so stressed out, and he had asked the bartender for a glass of whiskey. And, you know, these are the kind of things that he had to go through in his private moments of stress. Counter to that, me as a kid, the best way I could describe myself is sort of oblivious. So I was extremely sort of happy-go-lucky. I knew what was going on, but I didn't care. Not that I didn't care, I was just indifferent to it. And so when I came to the States, the fact that I left my friends had no real emotional impact on me, because This is just another thing that we have to do. To be honest with you, all those early years, my happy-go-lucky nature actually just sort of clouded everything that was going on. I just did what I had to do. I wasn't a particularly good student. I wasn't a particularly adept socially, but in my mind, it didn't really matter because I'm just doing what I have to do day to day, and I'm not really, I guess the term is I'm not really thinking about it. And I needed a lot of growing up. I'm still doing that now. I feel like, I'm still learning, I'm still growing. The kids are helping me mature. My wife's helped me mature a lot. And so I'm getting more, I mean, obviously I'm not the kid I was, but there still is that obliviousness sometimes. I do find myself in a situation where I see myself as extremely blessed, having a family, having a good job, having 3 beautiful, healthy children. I don't know how that happened, and I could have easily have seen myself not be in this situation. When I look back at the things I've done or the way I've behaved, I can't see myself as, oh, this is a success story, or these attitudes or these sort of thinking is going to get you to a place that's successful. However, I am in a place that's very blessed. I'm a homeowner. I have all of these things, and I don't really know how that happened. Seeing the things that your parents were able to do for you despite all the challenges that they had, it lets you reflect back on the way you were raised as a kid. But it also shows you, oh, how great of parents they were, and like, oh, how crappy of a parents they are. How come like they didn't do this? That being said, the fact that we ended up settling in Riverdale, the fact that we've made the choices that we've made, how he pushed us all through college, it's an amazing accomplishment. How, my parents were able to do all these things without the resources that I have, I can't even imagine what it's like to not know how to speak the language, having 4 kids, to do, all the logistical things that you have to do without the resources that, I mean, even now you could just at least pull stuff up online in your own language if you wanted to. Back then you had nothing, so you're just trying to find people to help you. Especially with kids and looking at the future, I don't know what it's going to be like for my children. Things are so different now than they were when I was a kid. And it almost sounds very much like an old curmudgeon thinking about the good old days. I want them to be happy. I don't necessarily need them to be successful business people. I just want them to have a happy, stable, and comfortable life. Not have to worry about money, but also not have the pressures of having too much money. My name is Seungjin, and this is my Korean American story.